Hey everybody, good evening. Welcome to our Calgary Real Estate Investment Seminar. We've got a good one for you today, how to achieve ridiculous rents in today's market. It's a great topic because what our new investors are trying to figure out is how to maximize your rent and earn as much cash flow as possible.
Yeah, and we really want to do it because I know a lot of people out there are talking about interest rates, and we want to show you how our investors get creative and compensate interest rates going up and making their investments work. So it's going to be a great topic tonight.
How to achieve ridiculous rents in today's market. This is our seminar. We're finally getting to it. Thank you for your patience. What we wanted to do is highlight why our clients are getting crazy rents right now and the reasons behind that. And we're going to also highlight certain things that you can do to get higher rents, ridiculous rents.
Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is adding a suite. When people come to us, they always ask us, how do we get maximum rents? The problem with single family homes is that it's only going to yield so much rent. Okay. And as we just said to him, like a single family home right now, unless you're getting creative, is anywhere, depending where it is, on average $2,200 to $2,500 on rents. Okay. The thing about single family homes though, it's hard to get it in the sweet spot. And we always talk about the sweet spot, Tim. The sweet spot in your purchase price on a single family home would have to be under $450,000 for it to work as a single family rental. Okay. And even at $450,000, Tim, you're getting either a half duplex, which is great, or you're getting smaller starter home, which we think has really roared back.
Yeah.
Like that market has really roared back. And we were nervous a few years ago on the smaller starter homes all the way in the deep south because there was nothing down there. But I went to dinner, Tim. I was telling you, Chairman's Steakhouse. I went to Chairman's, and if you guys haven't been there, you want a steak, you go to Chairman's. I couldn't believe we have a restaurant like that in Calgary.
It's in Mahogany.
It's in Mahogany, and I was telling Tim, I said I could have been in LA, New York, or Vegas. I mean, Tim and I went for a steak in Vegas. I think we're still paying for that steak, Tim. It was that expensive.
It was ridiculous.
It's ridiculously expensive. But anyway, now these communities down there have all of this infrastructure. They got beautiful restaurants. They got coffee shops.
There's all kinds of grocery stores and pubs and restaurants and everything. All the services that you would need to live down there. You don't have to leave there now. You don't have to travel, 10 miles on Deerfoot Trail to get to another community where the services are there. Everything is down there around that hospital now.
Yeah, so people want to live there. Like the young people, I don't blame them. Why wouldn't you want to live down there? Everything's new. Yeah, you go to your superstore, it's new. You go to the movies, it's new. Like everything's new. I live on the west side. We don't have a lot of new stuff. We really don't. It's coming. They're building in Aspen right now, but I like what they've done down south. So adding a suite to your property, it definitely increases the amount of money you're getting from that property. We just bought last month for an investor, and congratulations if you're on the call, Vidya. He bought in Minnepore. He lives in Toronto. He's been following us online and bought this property. Hats off to him on FaceTime. Trusted us 100% with the purchase. And this property is a legally suited property. It was owned by a doctor. Upstairs, I believe, was renting for $1,600. Actually, he just re-rented upstairs for $1,750. It was rented for $1,600. We bought it with tenants and had to bump the rents up. And he rented downstairs for $1,150. And he has a triple car garage. And the upstairs tenant gets one of the garages, and the other two single car garages are getting $200 each. So that's how much rent when you do rent the garage. I know we're going to talk about garages and stuff like that, but that's how much rent you're getting. And we're seeing some of these suited properties go for up to $1,900 for a main floor with a garage. That's how crazy it is. And we've seen basement suites go all the way up to $1,400 if it's a nice basement suite.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a question here in the chat. It says some builders are building third floors on new houses. If you want to build a third floor on an existing house so that I can rent the basement, how much does it cost and will the resale value appreciate for such extension? Building an extra floor on a house, we actually explored this probably 10 years ago. We had someone looking into building a second story on all these bungalows that our investors were buying. It's just too expensive to do it right now. If you put a third floor on a 2-story home, it's going to probably cost you $250,000 to $300,000. You may as well just go buy another rental property if you're going to do that. It's too expensive because the building codes are so strict these days that to put, you know, something on an existing structure like that, it's too complicated. The engineering's too hard. It's going to cost too much money.
And even to put a brand new suite into a property, we see people calling us about that as well. It's too expensive to do it. It's going to be $80,000 to $90,000 to do it to today's code. So we actually tell people sometimes when they come to us, it's not, unless you can use the bank's money. This is the only way we would do any of this kind of building, is if you could refinance money out of your property and pay for that from those proceeds, then go right ahead. But if you're taking your cash and you're building a garage suite, so that's building a garage with a suite, you see those in Mackenzie Town, you see them near the Curry Barracks, they're all over now. Anyway, if it's going to cost you $150,000 to $200,000 and you could use the bank's money, go ahead and do it, because really you're going to put what's in 10% down or 20% down.
Yeah.
So you'd put 40 grand down or whatever it is, you know, and that suite is only going to generate $1,200 to $1,300 rent. So if you're spending $300,000 or $200,000 or even $100,000 of your own money, it doesn't make sense. It's going to take you 10 years to recoup that back. Okay, so I hope everybody understands that about building a brand new suite or building a garage suite, or in this case, maybe adding such extensions. Now, some communities, if you are going to put a third level in, I know I live in Christie Park. I've looked at that, and a community like that where you have communities around your community that have homes that are that sort of square footage where you're looking to get to, and if properties sell in the 1.5, 2 million plus, then it could be worth it.
Yeah, Ken, we've got another question. How much value does a garage add to the property? Basically, what a garage adds, if you build a new garage from scratch and put it on an existing property, if it costs you $40,000, it's going to increase your property value by $40,000.
Yeah.
So another suggestion there is put that in your mortgage as well. We've had a client who bought a house in Winston Heights. He actually was an old terrible garage that was falling down. So they tore it down, put up a new garage, but it was into their mortgage as purchase plus improvements. So that works because you're really only paying for 5% of that.
Yeah.
But to build one from scratch, you're not going to add any more value than the value it costs to build that to the house.
Yeah, and same as basements. Like people say that to ask us all the time. Like, if I finish my basement, what's my property worth? Well, if you're putting a $60,000 basement in, it's probably going to be worth 60 grand more. The only way you can get around that, I can tell you, because I renovated my basement this year, is going with some wow factors. Okay, like I know with my basement, I will put it on YouTube once it's fully completed. I put in a wine room, I put in a movie theater, I put in a kids gaming room, I added another bedroom, and then I redid a whole bathroom. So all of those things scream like wow. Okay, so and I put a wet bar in as well. So if you could, and when I say wow factor is when you take someone in your basement and they go, wow, you know you're going to make money off that house. So that's how we roll with any of our flips. Whenever we're flipping properties, we teach our investors that there has to be a wow factor, and every room you could do something in to have a wow factor. But that's not what this seminar is about. We'll get to the next slide here, Tim.
Okay, number 2, student rentals. If you want to make ridiculous returns on your rentals, student rentals. You can't have a student rental all over the city, but you can rent rooms all over the city. So student rentals and renting a room is sort of the same thing. Yeah. We'll go over some of those situations. The typical student rental is you buy a house with lots of bedrooms, say 3 up, 3 down, near a university, near a college, near, you know, a technical college, state, whatever, and you rent out individual rooms to students. And the reason you do that is because those individual rooms right now are going upwards of $800 a month. So you're turning a suite of property that would be making $2,500 into a property that'll make $3,600 a month.
Or you're turning a basement suite that may rent for $1,100 if it's got 2 good sized rooms, and that's what we look at when we go in there, right? But if you do go down there, Tim, you're turning now something that would normally rent for $1,100-1,200 in this market to $1,600 minimum.
And if there's 3 bedrooms, even more, it's $2,400.
Yeah, so and Tim and I were thinking about this because there's an article like about a week ago, some poor university student, not poor, he could afford to rent somewhere. He's living in his car because he can't find a room right now. Like, it's just ridiculous. And so that is the going rate right now, minimum $750 for a room. We've seen, you know, upwards, if they've got more amenities, it could be even more, right? So student rentals aren't for everybody. We know when we're in a student rental, Tim picks it out every single time because all you have to do is look at the doors. If there's locks on every door, we know that it was a rooming house. So rooming houses can be great. If you are getting into them, we just want to make sure that the property is safe, the smoke detectors work, and that there is some strict controls on the common area. We see, Tim and I have been in so many properties, but that common area where they're cooking normally, Tim, and especially when they're going down the stairs, like a shared stairway, shared entranceway, it's always messy, right? So if you are getting into student rentals, you just really have to have strict guidelines.
Yeah, and build it into your lease that they have to maintain the property and keep it clean.
Yeah.
We've got another investor who had female specific student rentals. He would rent to female college students and only female college students, and they're generally, because they're a little cleaner than a little tidier than guys like me and Azad. Those properties were always more well maintained than the ones that had a bunch of guys in there.
Yeah, and the reason why we got student rentals in here is because it's flying off the shelf right now. People are making serious money from it. It is more management, Tim. But if you lay down the law and you tell people how you want them to live in your property, it could really work out, and your cash flow could be through the roof.
Yeah, so moving on to number 3, another way to increase your rental income is rent to owns. The basic premise around rent to owns is you're going to charge a little bit higher rent every month because the tenants have the end goal of buying the house eventually, hence rent to own. So you'll charge rent credits, is what they're called, you know, $200, $300, $400 extra per month. That money is set aside towards a down payment. They also have to pay a fee up front when they get into this lease situation. And we've seen people charge as much as $20,000 for an initial rent to own fee. Yeah, so it's a really, really good system. We've got investors that just focus on this. We teach how to do it the right way, where we bring the mortgage brokers in to work with the rent to own tenant so they can qualify. And it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. We've seen 5 years on this. And normally you're asking for a big deposit up front, not big, we've seen as little as 5,000. 5,000 would be the norm for a smaller amount, but we've seen upwards of, Tim, we've seen upwards of $50,000. So we've seen big ones. But anyway, but what happens with the rent to own? The rent may be set at $2,200, and then the rent credit may be another $400. That would be pretty standard. So they would be paying $2,600 per month, and that $400 a month goes to you. And there is 2 ways to do it at the end. We teach both strategies. One way is to keep those rent credits and the deposit and then deduct that from the final purchase price. So you are actually making all of that money up front. Or as Tim said, if you don't need that money, you could sit it in an account and then you build it into the purchase price at the end. So then you are making all that money. Yes, you're holding on to it. And if they do qualify, they do get that money for the deposit so they can prove to the bank that they're saving it. And we teach you how to do it step by step. And then in the end, make it win-win for everybody. Yeah, the one key to rent to own as a strategy is you have to have your tenants working with a mortgage broker over the whole term of that rent to own lease. You want to make sure that they're working towards improving their credit, towards saving a down payment, doing whatever they can to actually follow through with that purchase at the end of the lease term.
Yeah, for sure. We want it to be kosher. We want to make sure that everyone's going to go through with this deal. We want it to work. We don't want tenants to walk away from that situation. And we've had, Tim, very good success with rent to own, and it can increase your cash flow. And you may want to, if you've got properties out there, and this is why we really want to do this seminar, we know interest rates are going up, and we know if your costs are going up, we want to give you avenues to make more money. And rent to own can be a great solution for you to help someone out, first of all. That's why you would do it. For you to make extra income, so you're not paying for your rental property. And at the same time, that property is getting paid down by those tenants, so you're making even more money at the end of the day. It's great, Tim, that when we get involved, we're involved with the tenant. We're actually taking the tenant and the owner out to see properties together, in some cases to choose that property for them to live in. Very, very exciting stuff.
Okay, quick question on the last one. Nope, another question came in there. The issue with student rentals is to find the mortgage for it. Do you have any workaround for that, and also refinancing the same issue? When you're dealing with a student rental, what we suggest is that you work with a very experienced mortgage broker like Danielle. She can lead you towards the lenders, and she can also show you how the leases have to be papered so that the lenders will accept it. There's no one set way to do it. You just have to work with the mortgage broker who knows what they're doing. That's the biggest suggestion we can have there. The next question is, how much value does a finished basement add to a property that has a finished basement but it's not legal? Especially if you're using your money, not the bank's money.
Great question. Okay,
you can answer.
I'll jump in there. So if it's not a legal basement, it just adds the value that you spent on the basement. If it's a good reno, not a great reno, but just good floor plan. We've seen people actually do renovations where it actually lessens the value. So you just got to make sure that it's a good reno. And when I say good reno, just a good layout. I mean, some of these basements Tim and I have been in, the ceiling, the ductwork in the ceiling is too low and positioned wrongly in the property that you're ducking your head to get into different rooms and stuff. Or one room, we're in one the other day. One room was not, it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't appealing at all, because in that room, the vents went straight through it, and it was a very low ceiling room. So no one would want to even sleep in that room, you know what I mean, because of that. So we need to stress that. If you're legalizing, and we've made a ton of money for our clients doing this, if you're legalizing a pre-existing suite and paying very little to legalize it, you can make upwards of $40,000 to $60,000 we've seen in increased value by it now having a legal suite.
Yeah, and using the bank's money is when you purchase that house, you can do a purchase plus improvements and have the quote for that legalization as your renovation quote, and the banks will accept that because they know that once it's legal, then you have two sources of income and you can use that in your income calculations. So using the bank's money, it's a great way to legalize a suite. We've done it many, many times.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the way to go with that. Okay.
BRRRR strategy, BRRRR. Danielle talked a little bit about it. Basically, if you follow this timeline, you buy the property, you rehab or renovate the property, then you get it, rent it out to great tenants, then you refinance it, pull all or most of your money out, and then you repeat and do it all over again. This is a great way to increase your cash flow because you're pulling your initial money out.
Yeah, and the key here is adding value. So whatever you have to do to add the value, if it's putting in a legal suite, we're actually working with Tanner right now to find him a property exactly like this to do on a duplex, a side-by-side duplex. And if he did pull that one off in North Haven, that sold in one day over the weekend, came on for 650,000. If he could have pulled it off, putting in suites downstairs, it would have been another 120, call it. So he's in for 770, and it would have been close to worth about $1 million.
Yes.
So can he pull all of those funds out? Maybe there'll still be some still stuck in, but he'll get most of his capital back, and then he'll be able to reinvest that into another property and then go again. So it is as simple as that. The key to BRRRRs though is running your numbers up front.
Yes.
And Tim and I are so strict on our numbers that we can see what the end prices, the ARV, the after renovation value is going to be. And it's so tricky, right, Tim?
Yeah, because you can only refinance up to 80% of the property, that's what makes it tricky.
Yeah.
You're not going to sell this property at the end of the renovation like flippers are, who can pull all the money out. You can only pull 80% out. So
Yeah.
that's why it's tricky. That's why we really, really insist on everybody working their numbers. And we want to see those calculations before you remove your conditions.
Yeah, and if we're involved, we're saying yes or no. And Tim, 9 times out of 10 on the properties, it's a no.
Yeah.
Just because we only want to succeed. We don't want to speculate. We want to get into properties that are going to give our clients the money back, simply because we want them to go and do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. How to achieve ridiculous rents? Well, we got a quote from a guy who works on one of our office owners.
It's in our book. It's the best quote.
Yeah. If you're not cash flowing, you're not trying.
Yeah. Once we heard this, I mean, this comes from an investor that does Airbnb sublets and was making tremendous cash flow. We tell his story in our book here. He had over 17 Airbnb properties that he was subletting out and making crazy amounts of cash flow. And he told us that he said if your clients aren't cash flowing, they're not trying, and it's true. And in our book here, Fearless Real Estate, we talk about a young girl, Brittany Hale, her name is. She's over in Portugal right now traveling. Anyway, Brittany's a fitness instructor.
Yeah.
And this really stuck to us over the years. She wanted to become an investor. She didn't have a lot of money. She had to get her parents to co-sign. And she rented out her garage. We'll never forget this, in Mayland Heights for $300. She rented out the basement suite at the time for $800. And she rented out a room for $500 upstairs. And she lived for free. Not only that, she was able to pay down $10,000 a year on her mortgage. Okay, this is a girl that was renting an apartment downtown for $1,000 a month, and now has gone on to do it the second time with the same story on another property. And Tim, we noticed that next door to the property we bought her in Thorncliffe is a $1.2 million house.
Yeah.
So have we changed her life? I hope so. But that's what it takes. And am I telling everybody out there to go get roommates and stuff like that? No. But if you are stuck and you can't work those numbers, there's different avenues. And if you really want it, this young girl wanted it, and now she's probably living mortgage free.
Yeah.
And she's traveling the world right now. So she's doing pretty good. I'm on her Facebook and she's doing really, really good. But let's just get to some of these numbers here so everybody can see. I'm renting out a garage right now. You're getting a minimum $300 for that. That's what they're going for. We've seen upwards of $400. We actually seen Jeff and Judy over in Rosscarrick. They had an oversized garage that they let a cabinet maker seal off the garage and use it as a workshop. And they were renting out that garage for $600 a month. Now that's just crazy, but that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
And then they had a basement suite, and then they had the upstairs suite over in Rosscarrick. So that property there was definitely cash flowing. Okay. And we're talking in this market, those numbers work. And that's Rosscarrick, where you're buying in for $550,000, $600,000. Okay. A single car garage we're seeing right now rent for $200. And then renting out rooms, as we mentioned before, $750 to $850. Basement suites are going all the way up to $1,400. Now, main floor suites we're seeing up to $1,900. That $1,900 was achieved by one of our investors in Canyon Meadows, Brandon. And we're not saying you have to go out there and gouge people out there, because they are desperate, Tim.
Yeah.
Renters are desperate.
Renters are desperate now, but you got to remember, when rents do eventually come down a bit, when the rental market gets a little more supply, they're going to move on to someplace for cheaper rent.
Yeah, and I just want to talk about two-story homes with suites. You do see these pop up now and then, and they can be very attractive. Just because a two-story home, and we're talking like in communities like Evergreen or even Evanston or older Mackenzie Town,
Tuscany, you see.
Tuscany. You see these two-story homes, normally like they're 1,600 to 2,000 square feet. Those properties with the double car garage will rent upwards of $2,400. And if it does have a suite, you may get $1,000 for that suite in this market.
Yeah, and especially in the communities that are hilly and it's a walkout basement, because if it's a walkout basement, it doesn't feel like a basement. The tenant, walks out the door and they're at ground level. They don't feel like they're underground and, in a tiny little 500 square foot basement like most two stories.
Yeah, well, I remember we bought Jay in Tuscany on the boulevard. We bought him a walkout on the boulevard. On the boulevard was great because they're cheaper properties, and he legalized the basement suite. It was, I mean, Tim, it must have only been 800 square feet. It was small.
It wasn't very big, yeah.
And that thing in this market would rent for $1,000. So, and I remember Jay, you know what he did, Tim? Him and his wife and their little baby moved into the basement. They came from India. They were living in a condo just in the back here, in the small one-bedroom condo. So they didn't mind living in something small. They lived in the basement, rented out upstairs with the garage, and basically live for free. And now they've gone again to do it again in syndicate. So just amazing stories out there. Now, I'm not telling everyone to go move into a basement. I had to design my basement so I would like it. I can't stand basements. Just a side note, we go into some properties sometimes. We know we're not buying them. I know we're not buying them. He knows it. But Tim, he's always going into the basement, taking the clients down there, showing them the electrical panel, the furnace room. If I know we're not buying them, I'm not going downstairs at all. But anyway, rent to own, we did talk about that with the rent credits. If you are needing to do something like that, you just call us. We're here to help you make sure that's happening. And one more thing that's really, really coming back now that the oil industry is going through the roof. There's more business people coming into town, and they come in on 3, 6, 9 month contracts. Sometimes they come here, they're moving here, but their companies will put them up in furnished apartments. And if someone was asking about what furnished apartments would rent for, as I said, that 2-bedroom apartments were renting around $1,300. Now they're upwards $1,600 if it's newer, like in Union Square or the Chocolate Building. They're not even new buildings; they're 10 years old, right? But they're contemporary buildings. They're renting around the $2,200 range again. But as soon as you put furniture in there, you're getting $2,600, $2,300, up to $3,000 for rent in those properties. And we're also seeing some of these properties that were on Airbnb. When people are building or they have to sell and they don't have a place. We just sold a place in Seaton, a condo for one of our clients, and she was moving into another place that wasn't going to be ready for 3 months. She had to go rent an Airbnb, and she had to go and negotiate for, it was still very, very expensive, like $3,300 a month. But the Airbnb host was happy to do that because they've got one tenant, there's no cleaning costs for the next 3 months. So we believe, and trust me, you'll be the first ones to hear it. We've said it all along, when to pull the furniture out and when to rent it out as a normal rental, or right now we feel like you should be putting furniture back into some of your properties.
When COVID hit and the market for furnished rentals disappeared, we told everybody, get the furniture out and just rent it out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to a couple of questions here before we move on. Susan asks, can you use the bank's money to build a legal basement for a home that has already been purchased if you missed adding it to the mortgage at the time of purchase? The only way you can use the bank's money is you get a second mortgage or you use a line of credit, something like that. So you're not using your own cash, but you can't tie it to that initial mortgage. That has to be done within,
I know, Susan,
3 months of the purchase.
Yeah, Susan, you gotta forget about putting a suite in that property and just get another property and have a suite property and have more income from that. I know, Susan, for sure.
Okay, the next one, Lisa asks, anyone Airbnb over the garage suites? And if so, what kind of rents are they achieving? And would this justify a new garage suite? That's probably the only way it would justify building a new suite.
Yeah.
and basically you're not gonna use an existing garage and build a suite over. You're gonna have to tear your existing garage down and build it together. But if you Airbnb that garage, that would probably justify the cost. It would be like it's a little standalone rental property.
Yeah,
so that
I love
would
that.
probably work. But
and it comes down to area. And Lisa, I know where you live, so you've got Mount Royal University around the corner, 15 minutes to downtown. It would work all day, but you'd have to run those numbers. And what's interesting right now, just for everybody out there, we're looking at putting a syndication together and buying a small apartment building, like 6 units, but then turning the whole thing into an Airbnb. So it's like buying a hotel, basically. And if you run the numbers on something like that, the numbers are just off the charts. It's what's the topic called? Ridiculous rents. It's ridiculous. So can it work? Yes, it could work.
Yes.
Something like that.
okay, another question. Why the focus on the investor living in the basement as opposed to the main floor? Is it because you can make more off the main? Of course.
Yeah.
Right. So, and this really doesn't apply to everybody. A lot of our younger investors will do it because they just came from mom and dad's house, or they were living with a roommate in an apartment, or a smaller house, and they don't mind moving into the basement and renting out the top floor. Conversely, they can move into the top floor and rent out the basement. But what they are doing is they're starting to generate rental income from a property that they own. And they may not be making a huge amount of income, so they need to subsidize their income with this rental rate. So it's a sort of a beginning, it's a way to get into the real estate investment market.
Yeah.
It's a way to start off. And most of our investors, they do move in the basement, and it's house hacking at its best. If you Google house hacking in Google, you'll have a million articles, a million examples of young people doing this.
Yeah, and on our Crew TV, the link is in the chat. We have a house hacking video in there that you should watch if you have.